Welcome to day 2 of our scripture reading. Today we're going to be covering Genesis chapters 3, 4, and 5, as well as Matthew 2. So we've just come off Genesis 1 and 2, where God has created everything out of nothing. He creates it and then he rests. He talks about him making Eve as a perfect helper for Adam. And he's really set up what was the first marriage. It even says in Genesis 2:24, this explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. So we've got this perfect garden, this perfect creation, the first two humans, everything is perfect. But God gave us all free will. He gave all the angels in heaven free will. That's what allowed Satan to be cast out. But he gives us all as humans free will to choose him or not. We're not robots. He lets us choose whether or not we're going to love him and serve him. And so it shouldn't surprise us that as soon as God creates all this perfection, he creates that first marriage, chapter 3, Satan shows up on the scene. And when Satan shows up, he doesn't really come in and try to destroy Adam and Eve or destroy the garden. He just takes the truth and twists it a little bit to deceive Eve. He starts out by saying, hey, did God say you can't eat of any fruit in this garden? And Eve gets defensive. She's like, no, God said we could eat everything except for this tree of knowledge of good and evil. Oh, so there's more out there that God doesn't want you to know. And that's the first chink in the armor. When he puts that thought in Eve's head of, man, I deserve to know more than I know. That's when he cracked her. See, she went from defensive to failing just with that thought in her head. But then the crazy thing is it says immediately she turned and handed the fruit to Adam. She didn't go off looking for him. She didn't call his name. He was standing right there and watched the whole thing happen. And then once they failed and God comes looking for them, he doesn't come looking for them to destroy them or whatever. He just comes looking for them in the cool of the day, just wanting to walk with them and spend time with them. He obviously realizes something's different, and immediately Adam blames Eve, and he blames God. It's the woman you gave me. So I think there's something, and I've talked about this before in sermons, but I think there's something really powerful right there in chapter 3. Satan shows up. He twists the truth ever so slightly to take Eve from a defensive stance towards God. She's very defensive of God to, man, there may be more. And I think that has haunted us to this day. As humans, so many times we fail because Satan tempts us that we deserve more than we have, whether that's from a spouse or a parent or a child or a job or any kind of relationship. You know, if Satan can get that thought in our head that we deserve more than we have, can be a big chink in the armor. And then for us husbands, this is a challenge for you husbands that are listening. We can tend to be passive. That's our nature that Adam kind of, put into us, is that we stand by and we want our wives to make all the decisions. And then when everything goes to heck in a handbasket, we start blaming each other, and sometimes we blame God. And you're going to run into that. Whether you've done it or not, there are people that blame God for the bad things that have happened in their lives instead of understanding it's their own mistakes. Immediately, God takes them out of the garden, but there's something really important there too, because I think we think that's the punishment. But I think if you look deep, he's actually protecting them. It says, there are two trees in that garden. There's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but there's also the tree of life. So now that they've eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they know evil. Evil exists. Things aren't perfect anymore. Now, if they eat from the tree of life, they're going to live forever in evil. So God actually takes them out of the garden to protect them. So I just want you to see that even in that first marriage, in that first scene that Satan shows up, and that first temptation, the first failure, God still protected his creation. So that's a big encouragement for you guys, is sometimes we run from God or we blame God when bad things happen, but God is waiting there. He's still going to protect us. We may have consequences for our actions and for our sin, but if we run back to him, he's going to protect us. As we move into chapter 4, you've got the first children, Cain and Abel, and there's something really significant in this. Abel came with his best. He brought his best offering to God, and God accepted it, but Cain brought some of his. He didn't bring the best. He brought some, and God rejected that. And we know the story. Cain got really upset, and he eventually killed Abel. But God told Cain, sin is crouching at your door. It's eager to control you, and you must subdue it. So I think my encouragement for you is that it doesn't really matter what you've done. God is wanting to have that relationship with you. He's wanting you to come back to you, but there is a warning there. Sin is crouching at our door, and we've got to be ready. We've got to subdue it. It's got to take action on our part to do something. But when Satan comes at you and tempts you with wanting more than you have, often that's the sin that's crouching at the door. Even in Cain's case, he wanted something that Abel got, he didn't get. So my encouragement for you today is just simply pay attention to where Satan is trying to tempt you, that you deserve more. For you men, step up and be the spiritual leaders of your families. And when things go wrong, don't stop and blame each other. Take responsibility and come back to God, because he's eager to protect you. Hope you have an incredible day.